So before we start and introduce ourselves, fair warning and honest declaration. We don't claim to know everything that we are supposed to know. Um, more often than not, we encounter people when we do these kind of sessions, people who are actually more knowledgeable than us. It's just us presenting our ideas and our learnings to you. So by no means is this a playbook, if I would say so. Um, I hate the word playbooks actually because what it misses is context. Um, and I'll start with my introduction first, and then I'll get one of my very good friends, one of my very good friends, Siddharth, to talk to you. Siddharth is someone who I really respect. Is has been in the industry for a while. We almost both of us started our careers almost in SaaS almost at the same time when nobody knew SaaS as SaaS. Um, so um, 15 years of experience across product marketing, brand, blah blah blah. Um, I've had some exposure in Asia Pac and North America, um, right from early days in my career. Um, worked with worked and created revenue engines for, and proudly so, for a lot of organizations like Vinculum. It's Axel and Ivy Cap funded um, multi-channel order management platform. I've worked as a product manager and launched about 7 products um, in HCL. At HCL, was one of the initial growth teams at OneSource when we just had entered India and were competing with the likes of LexisNexis, um, Hoovers, etc., etc. And I started my career at Naukri, which was one of the best experiences ever. Guns played around at Martech, and was a part of a team which launched some of your most loved brands in India. Specifically, the work that I did for SimilarWeb is what I'm exceptionally proud of. Now that is what you see, but the reality is that the reality, or rather, the crux of it is that I'm a dad of 2 mini versions of myself, and I love them to bits. Um, Throughout my career, I've always felt that um, it's chaos that I harvest. And everywhere I've joined, I've loved working in chaotic environments where um, there were the smarts, but there was a lack of clarity. And I've loved giving clarity to people, um, telling them obvious things to people much smarter than me. That's something which I think is a career headline for me. Tried my hand at freelancing and pro bono consulting and writing, and I failed at all of them. Not because of lack of skills, but lack of time. And I pretend to head brand marketing and growth at PeopleStrong. I think it's a company that grows organically. It has the way PeopleStrong has come up in the last 15 years. We're in the 16th year today, and emerged as the platform for Asia Pac in HR tech. Um, is phenomenal. So I'm just here to support their growth, and exceptionally proud to be doing that. With that, I give the stage to Siddharth. Um, Siddharth, over to you.
Thanks, Amit. Right, hi guys, I'm Siddharth. I started my SaaS career in Wingify in 2012, and basically since then I've just been doing SaaS and nothing else, and SaaS marketing specifically. I was the first marketer at Wingify, saw the company grow from about 16 people to 250 people, from about a little less than 1 million annual revenue to approximately 15, 16 million annual revenue. And then I left in 2017, was consulting with about 8 or 9 different SaaS companies on various growth projects for about 2.5 years. After which I joined Fyle full-time, where I am today, in April 2020. And over here, I'm also leading the marketing team, completely tasked with growth goals. And basically what we're talking about today, that's what I've been doing for the past many years. Because in SaaS, it's especially for startups, it's mostly about growth, different kinds of growth. We define our own growth, but in the end, that is what we're looking for. And that's what I've been doing for the past, 8-9 years. So yeah, super happy to be here. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Coming on a Sunday afternoon just after Christmas is huge. So thanks so much, guys.
So Sid is just being humble. He's one of the guys. He's one of the most sought after people for advice, which he gives for free, thankfully, to us at least. So we do have a group of SaaS CMOs, and he's one of the very active contributors there. And even personally, for me, if I have something um, that I want answered, I do frequently call him for advice. So we're going to talk about why is marketing important for you, or why do you think that way or otherwise? What should be the business goals that you should be setting up for your startup? What are the common denominators, regardless of which stage you are at or where you're going? Which channels to focus on, and hacks that work magic, or rather have worked more magic for Siddharth and me. And we're going to share as many examples as we can. So, why is marketing important for you? If your answer is growth, then how do you define growth? Growth has different connotations, different meanings for each one of you. Context is important. So, depending on which stage you're at, growth would mean different things to you. I would begin by saying that most startups don't fail because they can build a product. They're all good at building products. They fail because the early traction is something which they miss, and also to the fact that no amount of good marketing can make a bad product succeed, or a bad organization succeed, or can back a bad founding team, right? So it's important that we understand that. Um, okay, so context is important, and your goals will evolve, iterate, change with the stage of your startup. When you start off and you have an MVP, your goals are different. When you get your first 1 million of revenue, your goals are different. The next 5 million is where you start looking at Series A, Series B. At 10 million, you get more surety of your scalable model, and at 25 million, you can't fail after that, right? It's very rare for you to fail after that. So your goals will be different and at every stage. So the most common goals that we want to talk about today are category and brand creation. A lot of you would be a part of looking from an industry perspective. You'd be operating in a red ocean. You would want to create a niche for yourself, and creating a brand and a niche in today's world isn't as difficult, but isn't as easy as well. I mean, if you want to create a brand in a generalized category, it's difficult. You've got to identify niches. You've got to acquire users, even if it's early stage of your product, because that's where the feedback loops come in. Revenue will always be something which we all chase as marketers or salespeople, or whoever, the founders. And product-led growth. Now, while product-led growth is more of a strategy or a GTM than the goal itself, but not many achieve this. And Slack or a Dropbox knew that running a startup and growing a startup is going to be increasingly difficult. So if a growth is on your agenda, you need to look inside out. How can I keep demand high without paying 70 to 20% higher every year on Google ad spends, on running ads, to help you acquire new customers? So if product-led growth is a goal, it requires a vision, intent, and investment, and hence it features on this goal setting slide. Sid?
Yeah, over here I agree with you completely. It's basically about like really making sure what are you going after. What is that maybe one metric, or what is that final outcome you're going after, and like doubling down all efforts. So just one small thing I want to add over goal setting over here is, in early stage startups, our biggest problem is that we're all over the place, thousands of things to do, all of them equally important, and often we're not able to prioritize what comes first or why should we do something, right? Um, in my personal experience, that is because of bad goal setting, where you yourself haven't really discussed and sorted out your North Star metric, and then you do everything. Like social is also important. Putting a website, different things is also important. Having PDFs to give to sales team, that is also, everything is important, right? But generally speaking, if you're able to get your goals set like really crystal clear, a lot of things become irrelevant, and you're able to focus on where you want to get.
So, the theory of constraints comes into play more often than not at this stage. But what Sid just mentioned, it's very important to know what your goals are. And you gotta, basically what it says is that, there will always be one weak link in a chain of your objectives, which will make you fail. And it's important that so if you have, say, one objective, and you need to ask yourself, what's making you fail at that? So you set that as a goal, you know what your drawbacks are, and then you break those drawbacks into, okay, I'm failing because, or I cannot grow because. And then you define them, and then you try to find answers for all of them. If you're able to do that, it's not just an art of living class, but more often than not, you'll succeed because you have answers to why you're failing or what is stopping you. And which is why that goal, identifying that one thing that you want to do for 3-6 months, is going to give you more chance for success, gives clarity to your team, and also your early investors that this is my challenge, this is how I'm going to solve it. So goal setting, be very clear about what you want to do, because everything from there on flows that way. And fluid, agile, flexible are all good for an organization or a product. These are good buzzwords for your product, but they cannot be for your strategy. So goal setting is extremely important. So what are the common denominators across all these? You've got to acquire new users, you want to create a niche, you want to operate in a stealth mode, you've got to prove your product in the market, you've got to get your early investors in. But what are the common denominators, and how should you go about doing that? Again, it's not a playbook, it's just what we feel we would do and what the founders that we have worked with or observed have done. So let's start with the ICP mapping. I'll let you take a first stab at that, and I'll come back later.
Okay. So in my experience, what has been with ICP mapping is, and how we've gone about it is, obviously it's much easier when you have some sales conversations, or you have some support tickets, or you have like the founders talking to some people already. Okay, in which case the ICP, this thing becomes kind of easier. However, when it's very early stage, very early stage, I've felt that a marketer can't really do much unless the marketer is an early employee and is themselves thinking like the founder, because that first spark that sets off the fire. ICP over here, Varta, is your ideal customer profile. Sometimes it's called buyer persona. Previously, it used to be called buyer persona, all of that, right? So now, generally speaking, I'd say the first spark of an ICP has to be hit by the founder. But when you start getting more and more data, and you start getting signals from your discussion with your market, etc., that there's some kind of person who really likes my product and is happy to buy, is happy to pay versus just say, wow, it's amazing, right? At that stage, I'm just telling from my example, what really happens is founders usually talk to a lot of ICPs, but the rest of the organization doesn't. And often the founder knows exactly what the ICP wants after, say, 10, 15 conversations. But maybe the first marketing hire, maybe the engineers, they don't really have that good an idea. I would say, and then what I've seen work really, really well, if you've got that initial ICP, let everyone in on the conversation with this person that you're talking to, either through recorded, or you can even solve it fine. The founder is going to talk to the ICP over a Zoom call, but the rest of the company or whoever is there is on the is there on the call. Because what happens is, over time, your organization starts getting this insight into who really is this person that is going to buy from us. Okay, and they're able to understand them deeply. And the best part is, from marketing perspective, they start using the ICP's language. Whatever the language is, the keywords they use, the specific jargon, the industry jargon they use, And the more that language flows through the organization, the better your sales and marketing becomes. So yeah, that would just be my thoughts around ICT. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were to just summarize, I would say your ICP is the best ICP is your first 10 paying customers. Or even if you look at it from the customer, their journey perspective, if they've taken trials, you should be very inquisitive. You as a founder should be very inquisitive why they tried. Ask that question again and again to yourself and to them. Who are these people? Why are they here? When they're taking trials, then ask them, why did they take a trial? What were they looking at? Are their use cases solved? um, if they are, then you dig deeper who they are. It could be that they'd be trying your product not as in the capacity of a, let's say, a sales guy, but as an individual. But then you need to, then it opens up whole new set of use cases for you. So it's important for you to ask and really, really understand who your first initial customers are, first initial trials are, go deep inside them. And once you've identified and remember, they can't be an ICP. I've never seen an ICP which stays the same. It changes. Your ideal customer profile changes with the product that you have now, the product you will have in the future, and your messaging, the way you sell, your business model will evolve with that. So identifying who your customer is extremely important. Nothing works without a customer identification and having a feedback loop that can drive your product and marketing and sales. If you get so your goal is to arrive at a place where if you have 10 of these customers who you now believe are your ideal customers, how do you get to 20 and then 100, and then that becomes your blueprint for at least 3 to 6 months of the first year. So that step is that to arrive at that blueprint, you have to do a lot of grunt work. I would not say you would be able to do that alone. Your product, your marketing, as Sid mentioned, all of you should be obsessed about them. And if you're able to close that feedback loop, that insight loop, you would arrive at it faster, and your chances of success increase. Mapping the pain points. Now, isn't there any marketer who doesn't talk that language? So you need to understand that there exists a matrix where a customer has a pain, and that's where you come and solve that pain and give him value. And this pain and this value alleviation comes at a price. So how do I strike a balance at that? I can give you many examples of founders who, while trying to do that, who while at the early stages when they were trying to map the pain versus value, they kept the price so fluid that for each pain that their product solved, they were willing to price the product different. And in the initial few years, it pays, because at this point of time, you don't know how to price your product. I mean, imagine if you are a MailChimp alternative, and trying to solve the same pains with the same value, going in for your customers and demanding the same price as MailChimp. Understand, they will not take you. They will not buy you. So the conundrum in front of you is, how do I position myself 5x better? What are the RTVs? What are the reasons to believe for them versus 2x cheaper? Now, is cheaper going to be the reason they buy you, versus the best solution ever? That, okay, fine, MailChimp does this, but my MailChimp version or alternative has everything built in, right? And at that price, that is the best solution ever. Can you present that? Versus the only solution. There are many category creators or many products who come and solve a problem which nobody else has, right? So you need to very quickly arrive at what is the value that you bring to your ICP. And if you're able to map that pain, value, price, if you're able to identify what do I mean for them, it's a very good situation to be in. Sid?
Yeah. So in mapping the pricing to the value, etc. Obviously, everyone knows about. There's two things actually over here. Let me point two things. One is talking about the pain points. So generally, what I've seen is that founders, founders, they love their product. They're in love with their business, and they really want to go out and talk to people about it. They want to talk to prospects about it. That listen, this is my business. This is what we do, etc. Right? When no one really cares, people care about their own problems. Just like you care about your product, people care about their problems, right? And if you always just start with problem first, nothing else but problem first, right? In that case, you're almost always, that is, just talk about the pain point first, right? Start from there. Results are always much, much better. The second thing is, I think most early stage founders, the mistake that I also saw in Wingify that we made, we were priced too low because we were scared. We were like, who will pay? Initial price point was I think $19. Then it became $49 for the smallest plan. Okay, because we think, yeah, who will pay more than $49 for this? Okay, and what happens is, as you move up market from say an SMB to a mid market, your ICP changes, and in that case, what happens is your pain value price balance, that also changes, and often founders make the mistake of sticking to the old price or the 2x cheaper version for too long. Okay, what happens is, let's say I'm buying a Verna, okay, and a competitor comes and tells me we're from India and our Hyundai Verna lookalike for the same thing is for 5 lakh, when the average Verna costs around 11 lakhs on road. Okay, in that case, there's a huge disconnect. There's something wrong. For me, I cannot believe that Hyundai Verna versus say another new competitor, and it can be at a half the price. This often leads to a conundrum where your pain value price and also how you're placed in the market has gone out of whack. So it's almost always better to be priced around your competitors, because then for your ideal customer ICP, you're in that same bracket. You're in the same bracket of your competitors, and it's better to be there versus being either too expensive or too cheap. So that is one place where I see early stage founders really have a disconnect. Yeah, Amit.
Yeah, I'm just also looking at the chat. There's very pertinent questions coming in. What comes first, brand or revenue or users? Honestly, I mean, just my perspective, we are not the right people to answer. You've got to answer that question yourself, because there are many, I know of many brands who were built even before the product got initial traction. Then there were products which had so much virality built in that they became a brand overnight just by user recommendations. So, what comes first is totally a factor of, it totally depends on which stage you are at. And that's where you arrive it from. You can't make a brand for people who don't know anything about you. Building a brand means that you mean something to someone, right? So it's not going to work till the time you've acquired a few users. I would say, personally speaking, I would prioritize user acquisition more than revenue. And brands get created not by your insistence. They get created when the community, when the customers are aware and like you, and identify you as one of the use cases or product that solves some use cases. So there's no straight answer to that, by the way. That's my opinion. So do you have any contrary view?
No, over here. I'm busy.
Great. So a couple of questions were about how to create that. So before you even go about creating a brand, I would say create a positioning statement. What's your strategic narrative? What is your narrative? Who are you? So the way I look at it, or rather me and Sid, we both look at it as marketers. We look at the big picture. What's the big problem that you solve? The purpose. So are you a intelligent planet create vision of IBM, or just do it vision of Nike, where they don't sell, they don't talk about shoes. They say people who are doers associate with us, and that's what Nike sponsors, and that's a kind of brand ambassadors Nike keeps. Or are you trying to be a Starbucks, where you have a third world? So Starbucks initially, when they started with the concept saying that, so there's a home, there's a work, and there is a third place. So the third place is where you meet people, you can work, you can do either of the things, you can relax, you can chat, you can read, where you spend time. That's the third place. So first of all, you need to decide who you are and what is the big picture you want to give. What's the future of the world and your role in it? It's big brands. Um, this statement is more of an evolution. Early stage founders very rarely have this kind of a vision where they can say that, the world is moving towards this, and this is what my company ABC Networks is going to do, right? It takes a lot of conviction, confidence in your product and your people to do that. But if you can, trust me, you'll get noticed immediately. Another thing which a lot of people, especially who already have a product in the market out, would be answering that question is why you, and why you right now, right? If you can answer that question, your user acquisition and revenue happens quickly. But how do you arrive at that? What is the story? What is the narrative? What is that story that inspires your people, your your existing customers, your prospects, your partners, and engages influencers? What is that story? Um, I I wanted to, but I can't take names here because um, I worked with certain brands and those brands were competitors. But all I can say is you would have hundreds of examples that where a company's strategic narrative was so strong that everybody started believing in what they said and what they stand for in very very early days. One of the examples I can take is Freshdesk. When they started off, they quickly arrived at a place where they were no longer a alternative to another SaaS product. And then from there on, the narrative it spread like wildfire. A clear definition of what you do and can do for whom, how, and what makes you stand out is absolutely critical. And mind you, this is not just an early stage problem. Even with here today at PeopleStrong, we are constantly redefining what do we stand for, who's the customer, who is the customer we sell to. So for example, we take a clear positioning saying we work with enterprises, high growth, talent centric enterprises who keep customers at the center of their business. So giving you that example, we don't, focus on companies who just want an attendance system. We are an enterprise grade HR tech platform. We have a platform which is probably the most comprehensive in the world. So if I don't define who my customers is to them, and then the market is confused about who do you sell to, and for revenue, for getting customers acquisition, and from a messaging point of view, it's extremely critical that your customers know who, what problem do you solve and who do you solve it for, and that makes us stand out. Sid, your view.
I want to give my personal experience of like a company that I saw doing amazing branding right in the beginning. Okay, in June 2012, I first signed up for the HubSpot newsletter list, where they used to teach marketing, because I was a new marketer, I did not know, and where do you learn? And at that point of time, there was HubSpot and their newsletter and their blogs, okay, and their ebooks, etc. So I think for about a year and a half, 2 years, I read every newsletter, every ebook, everything. Okay. One thing I remember was them always saying, and the big picture they were saying was, they're saying marketing is changing, right? Marketing, their point was that marketing always had been spam emails, mass emails to different people, or ads, etc. Okay. But what if marketing became creating value through content and attracting prospects and users because of that, right? And they kept pushing this picture of how today's, or say 2012, 2013, the latest marketer, the best marketer is the person who creates value versus pushing unrelated messages. Okay. And I wanted to be that guy, right? I want to be like, I associate with that brand that they created, of the kind of market that you want to be. You don't want to be pushing irrelevant stuff on prospects. You want to be creating value that they come to you. Okay. Like, you want to actually feel valuable. Okay. And that's a story that they completely put. That's a brand that they picked up. And even HubSpot was really a startup back then. Yet they picked up this brand and this positioning, and they really ran with it. Like, they pushed everywhere. And I remember there was this entire wave of new tech marketers who wanted to be that guy. In November 2013, we ended up buying HubSpot. Marketo was there, arguably much larger, far better product, far more features. There was Pardot, there was Eloqua. All of these other big competitors were there, but we ended up going with HubSpot. And for the two reasons, the customer experience was incredible. Like, you didn't have to call them, you put your number, they called you back. You didn't have to, and Amit will talk, you'll talk about customer experience later. So I want to kind of highlight that right now. It was just incredible. With Marketo, you reached out and you waited when they'll get back to you. With HubSpot, you dropped in your number, they'll call you back almost instantly. Okay. And the second thing was the brand they created around what kind of marketer a person should be. Like, it really excited people. And I remember even my CEO, even he didn't want to go with what he thought of an old tool. He also wanted to go with because what HubSpot was saying was basically jiving with the kind of company that a SaaS startup back then wanted to be. That we create value, we create true value, and from there we bring in our customer, etc. HubSpot played this right from the beginning. If you guys want, you can go to Wayback Machine and check out their website from 2012 onward. It's a case study in the right kind of branding just over multiple years. And they clearly defined who for the new age tech marketer, the young guy, like say who I was at that point of time. And it really made them stand out. So
Such is the impact that out of all 100 people, let's say I interview, 70 of them have a big section on their CV, which is all the HubSpot certifications.
exactly, yeah,
That goes on to prove what kind of a community they've built, and that's a positioning which they clearly took, that they can not only help solve your marketing problems, but also create a community out of it.
exactly.
One thing I want to add, and we're gonna talk about it a little later as well. If you look at Drift, conversational marketing is not a new thing, right? But the way Drift captured that imagination of people, that title, that topic itself is phenomenal. Right from the CEO to the CMO, by the way, who me and Sid are both good big fans of Deja. The way they you go to the website and just see how not just their tool, not just the chat widget, but their website talks to you. Look at Gong, clear, absolutely hard hitting communications with balls. That's what they do. It's very important that you own the narrative. It's very important that you identify what you're extremely good at and own that thread for yourself. If you can, that's the best place to be in. As we talk about brand, we'll also talk about personal brands and what you can do and a few hacks around it. We will delve deep into this, but just to conclude this slide, creating your positioning statement on your narrative is the most important thing once you've identified your ICP, and your narrative should clearly define what do you do for whom and how you do it. Once you've established that, look at the big picture, the big problem, big world problem that you solve, and you own it, you're the kings. Moving on. Hiring your A team. Now this Sid isn't this something we talk about every day? I mean, not just us, all 100 of us. Um, Everybody wants to hire their A team, the ACE team, especially the founders. When you're starting off, you don't even know marketing that well to be able to hire marketers. Um, I, for one, have right from the start of my career, when I started taking charge of marketing or brand or product marketing or product management, I have been hiring, I've always thought of it like not running a function, but running a unit of organization within an organization. And I've seen founders struggle. I've consulted a few founders who wanted to find the right people. And hiring your first team is the most difficult job if you don't know what your priorities should be. I'll let Sid open with this and then I'll come back in. Sid.
Right. So my experience with hiring that first marketer, I was the first marketer in Wingify back in 2012, and after that, I've been in situations where, like, uh, I've seen that in B2B SaaS companies, and I'm specifically talking about B2B SaaS over here. There'll always be an early engineer who knows the product inside out, like who joined right in the beginning with the founders, okay, maybe the first hire, the second hire, okay. And there'll always be, if there's a marketer, that marketer will almost always be someone who has an engineering background. um, like I said, understand programming logic, thinks very much in, you know, how to automate stuff, how to make profit out of stuff, like things like an engineer. And they're extreme self-learners, by which I mean you don't have to say, okay, listen, you do this, do that. You just say, listen, we have to create an ABM campaign, figure out. They'll go to Google, they'll figure it out, they'll talk to 3-4 people in their network, they'll, you know. So there's a lot of positive qualities. They're networking out, they're self-learning, they're just like really figuring things out on their own. And for me, that person makes the best first marketer, because generally speaking, there's so much things to do. And it's often come down to the founder or the co-founders, and they're figuring out, okay, what do we do now? And co-founders often think in really smart ways, because they have to do that to make the organization work, to make the startup succeed. Um, and if you get like a person who needs a lot of direction, who might be amazing with direction, ABM, sorry, Mohit, account-based marketing, it's just a term for automating email outreach and this thing. Yeah. So yeah, if you get a person who's amazing with direction, can do a great job, but often the founder does not have time, or themselves don't understand what direction to give right now, because they're also figuring out the market, they're also figuring out what to think, which is why you want this person who is experimenting and trying stuff with the founder versus waiting for direction from the founders. Okay. And that is why my first marketer is always a smart generalist who just needs an indication and will run and figure it out. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just looking at a few chats. I'll pick them up, some very really interesting questions. So I have a slightly different view here. While almost uh, I agree to almost everything that it says. But if first marketing, I was the first marketing hire for one startup. Not just the first marketing hire, I was employee number one for a company called Zevin basically created a new division called Data Guru. We I was the guy who actually created the product itself, hired the first 50 people, created the entire marketing, created a pipeline and revenue for 2 crores in the first 8 months, launched the product, got Google, Make My Trip, Mark, Grove, and you name it, as our clients, ran campaigns for them. Um, and before I moved on to HCL as their product guy. But I feel that, yes, absolutely, your first marketing hire should be a generalist, somebody who's great at, he may not be 15, 20 years of experience. No, someone who can work with people. So if I were to put myself in that man's or that person's shoes, I would I would require a person who would be able to work with founders, understand and help them formulate their vision. Somebody who can say no to them, somebody who can make them think, can do workshops with them, arrive at what they need to think about. You do not need a very experienced guy for that. Somebody who can then somebody with knowledge on how to run the marketing engine, brings in new people. And you'd be surprised that in many a teams I have personally done that. I've hired interns and freshers and taught them how to market. Some of these people actually became the best mentees I've ever produced. I've had engineers with broken English actually start. I've taught them how to do campaigns. So what you need is person who knows how to get things done and is a thinker, can think logically, break down problems, help their founders identify and break down problems, find the missing links and execute. Execution is very, very important in the early stages of your career. Somebody who's had his hands dirty would be the guy you would need. Um, Also, you would need, I would say, just if we ask us the question, who's the first marketer, your A team, I would need one person from the founding team or the product team itself who can be positioned as a brand. I'm a very strong proponent of, in your early days, give a face to your brand and see how it works. At Vinculum, it was our CEO Venkat Knott. We were at Series A. We went to Series E by positioning him as as the industry thought leader, and we grew exponentially fast after that. We brought in a motley crew. Um, when I went in, it was very difficult. We all were freshers. Very rarely did anyone know about marketing. So what was needed was to break down everything into a project. You break down things into project, get tell them what needs to be done, get them to acquire skills, and start running the first win. The moment you start winning is when you start asking for more funds, more people, and that's where you get it. So different strokes, but yes, I 100% agree with Sid that your early hires should be people who are builders. May not be necessarily be engineers, but needs to be smart, extremely smart at doing at building your first team. Moving on. Okay, so here's we take a little bit of a break, where we talk about a strategy and break our flow and talk about the strategy, which is better, a land and expand or a sniper approach. Land and expand is essentially where you get in to in with a small or a biggish deal initially and within an account. So first things first, see an organization as an account which has a lot of contacts. There could be a CMO, there could be a marketing head, director, senior manager, marketing. And if you assuming that you have a martech platform that you're selling, how do you land in and then expand throughout the organization, or expand your project or your ARR from that account? I said I'll and the other approach to that is, you don't go after a lot many accounts. You identify the best fit accounts. Remember, the trick is not to find 80% of your customers now who will contribute to 20% of your business. It's the opposite. You've got to find just the 20% who will contribute to 80% of your revenues. So how do you do that? Sid, I'll let you open again, and then I'll bring in a few examples of how we did it and what I've seen, what I've observed.
Got it. So what worked for us, and this is also again, I've seen organizations generally, experienced founders often start mid-market or on the upper end of the market because they've been there, done that, they understand how the system works. Younger founders often start in the SMB space, lower cost tools, etc., because that is what they're more comfortable with. Like I've rarely seen a young founder who targets the mid-market enterprise market, right? So coming to that, low cost tools, $9, $10, $49, these almost always work better when the problem is more widespread, and you can go after a much larger market. And in this case, you almost always want people coming into your funnel as easily, as quickly as possible. And these are cases where, say, free trials, 30-day free trial, etc., work really well. And these are the places where you'll have, instead of having a big form on the sign up page, you'll probably just have email. You'll say, hey, listen, just give me your email and get started. And in this case, your product becomes central. So for example, in VWO or in Wingify, if you guys want to see, it's called VWO.com. I remember what used to happen with this is we had this editing platform where you could edit a website live, and then just like PowerPoint, you could edit a website like that. And I remember, out of any free trial, the moment they came to that page where they opened up their website inside VWO.com and started editing that website, they were mind blown. That was like that one moment where they were converted. And we had like a 70 or 60% conversion rate from there. If someone reached there, 60-70% of them would convert into a paying customer, ideally on the same day for $49 only, right? So with low cost, widely used this thing, you need to have a product that wows you at some stage, ideally as quickly as possible. And this is a very PLG driven, like someone just asked about a PLG. This is a very PLG driven situation, okay? The second approach is obviously the sniper approach, where you go after elephants. It takes a long time to go after them, but then the deal size is much larger. It's a very relationship-based sale. It's not something where you show them the product and you say, okay, just go ahead and buy it. No, you have to prove why. You have to prove why you and why today, like Amit mentioned in the couple of slides previously, that like you really have to make a serious business case against competitors, against the market, against incumbents, and incumbent might even be an Excel-based process. Now, in all of this, the one thing that always matters is like highlighted. Thanks over here to Harshita. She highlighted this. You have to have stickiness. If you don't have stickiness, then you're just always fighting a leaky bucket at the bottom of the funnel, and nothing works. Like in a sniper approach or in going after large accounts, you tend to hemorrhage a lot of budget going after each single account, and in smaller ones, there's people coming on top, free trials happening, but they're just not sticking around. There's no revenue per se, right? Now, if you figured out how to get people to stick, after that comes your basically how you're going to expand within the account. Now, like I've mentioned over here, that there's very well-known cases of PLG-driven growth, like Slack and Atlassian, etc., who were great at getting more and more people to within the org to adopt the product, and then slowly it goes to a decision maker. The decision maker says, all right, fine, 10, 15, 20, 30 people are already using it. I just might as well pay for it. It doesn't matter. Usually that approach, if you can get to that, again, holy grail of successful SaaS, but often very difficult to get. If you're not in the right space or you don't figure out how do you bring other people into the fold or using the product. And sometimes the product is not even logging in. To give you a very simple example, decision makers like say VPs, CMOs, CXOs, etc., they don't really log into products. Okay, but for them to use it, you want a report that goes out on email every week. It's a very simple example, but generally speaking, this is done why? So that that person also knows your product, is looking at the data probably once a week, every day, whatever it is. And finally, when the time comes to renew, or someone says, okay, fine, we're using this product, should we go ahead and renew it? He or she at least knows it. He says, oh yeah, I get the email every day or every week. I know what these guys do. I look at the data. It's part of our reporting process. Go ahead and, just use it or go ahead and renew it. Versus them not even knowing about it. It's just used by a team somewhere.
This is something we used to do a lot at Data Guru. So what we used to do was our users were essentially mid-level marketing guys who wanted business information on Indian corporates, which was very difficult to get. And we gave them the access. But what I initially used to do was I used to personally write to all their marketing heads, telling them not just about my product, but actually giving them a dashboard of how their team has been using it, and with a simple question that your productivity or your marketing effectiveness, according to my experience and my data, could be 40% higher if your team started doing campaigns right off my platform. And not just that, I mean, we didn't just get that, we got them to trust us with their campaigns just by doing this. So said, you make an excellent point. Your your initial success would depend on identifying who your user is and who your buyer is, who writes the checks, what does your product mean to him, and how do you make the product sticky to your customers themselves. I'll delve on that a little later. I have something which I wanted to cover later, but I'll cover here itself, and I'll give it back to you, Sid, very quickly. One of the products which in my previous company we used to market in India was Asana. And with Asana, the way the product is, if you've used Asana, it would most often be the marketing guys who would take Asana to run their marketing off it like a project. And very quickly, all we had to do was just write to the CEO that the use cases and say, hey, Asana has you could use Asana to set up your OKRs. You can actually run your performance analysis right off it. And your HR team should take a look. I've activated the following section, and they should be doing it. And suddenly the customer success team's use cases also open that these are the projects that your customer success should be running, and so on and so forth. And this is the way the enterprise a product can land and expand within a company. You enter with a single use case and you solve 50, but those use cases should be built into your product. So the question you should be asking yourself is, and there's no harm in solving one use case. I'll give you an example. Zero Bounce does one thing and does it exceedingly well. It It takes your database, it takes your contact data, it cleans it up and tells you how much of it is clean. And they're doing a very good business versus a Clearbit who does that at an enterprise grade and much more than that. So there's no harm in being a use case solver versus solving multiple use cases. Just do it well. Back to you, Sid, and I'll continue
Yeah,
after.
just one small example over here. I remember I was in Wingify for 5 years, okay? And there was this one product that was there longer than I was, okay? And that product was called SEO When I joined, it had been installed by the founder, I think a year ago before I joined, to just check our SEO keyword rankings on Google US every week. Every Monday, the email would come, okay? 5 years, I also used it. Okay, every Monday we would look, me and my entire team, we would open up the email to see where our keyword rankings were, and it was there. I think now the product is closed down, and after I left, it was still there. So that was exactly that one use case, one single use case, just your keyword rankings on Google USA for the keywords you want to track. Okay, and it was there for the longest time ever because SEO was such an important channel for us, right? That is a brilliant example of just one use case, brilliantly done, very simple. And we were paying, I think, $279 per month for it. That person, he was a single founder. I researched him. He never even reached out to us to say, listen, convert to a annual contract and give me 20% less or nothing. He didn't even want the cash upfront, didn't care. Just minting money, sitting somewhere in Russia or something he was from, and just minting money. Right? So yeah, another example of a great product, single use case, extremely sticky.
Yeah. So I wanted to cover this bit a little later in our hacks. So I'm bringing in one hack. It's wrong to even call it a hack. Actually, it's something so obvious everybody would already know. But a startup's ability to grow viral, and that somehow related to landing and expanding or acquiring your initial few users. It depends on the time and the virality quotient, which is essentially how many users one user can bring in. So imagine Dropbox, Eventbrite. Eventbrite is a great example. Snapchat, TikTok, right? Um, how many users does one user bring in? If the nature of your business is that you can reduce your marketing spend to almost zero, right? Depends what use cases you solve and how you solve them. So how do you achieve that kind of a virality for someone who is not a TikTok? No, interesting thing, and it's just food for thought. When TikTok started, where do you think they acquired their first users from? Just think about it. So the first step could be build a product that is worth recommending, and that's something which should give sleepless nights to founders. We did speak about product-led growth. I did not want to purposely go in deep into it because that's a whole different session in itself. But how do you build a product which is worth recommending? Is your product really worth recommending? You keep track of your net promoter score. Anything above 9, you should be their best friend. You should be obsessed about them. You should know what would it take for them to recommend more users. That's the best way of um, acquiring customers. And believe it or not, this is a tactic used very, very effectively, even in enterprise SaaS, not just startups in SMB SaaS. Then how do you prompt them for recommendations? Whether is it in-app messages or is it a really classy mail that goes out every weekend, every night, as what we discussed before, and saying them, hey, my analysis says do these 5 things, you'll be better at marketing. Of course, you know your job, but by the way, if you really like our product, I've seen some good feedback coming from you. Would you want to recommend us to more of your peers? We ran a similar program when I launched SimilarWeb in India, which was a referral program. SimilarWeb was a very well-known product. It already had thousands and millions of customers. But imagine a nicely run program focusing on the opinion makers and influencers within the industry. So there are many other organizations who are already doing that and very successfully. So I don't want to go deep into it because we'll be running out of time. But second, focus on channels your customers use to learn about your product. Um, Again, bringing back to the question, where did TikTok acquire its first? In fact, the most customers, it was through YouTube. Um, so if you're bombarding your ads in Thailand on LinkedIn, where clearly the most popular channels are Facebook and Instagram, then you're actually wasting your time and your money, right? Um, so it depends. If you want to spread your word around, you should you should focus on where my customers should be. And I made a few notes around other such things, but I believe when Sid and I discuss channels is where they're better places where these should be discussed. But I hope I've been able to explain the sticky factor for this particular session at least. Now, selecting the growth channels. Now, I'm bringing this before we talk about channels themselves. Or Sid, would you want to do this after?
Let's do this after.
Huh?
After is better, yeah.
I'll just quickly skip this and I'll come back to it later. Yeah. So let's define the channels, Sid.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Why don't you start?
Yeah, so quickly, these are your default, most often used marketing channels for B2B SaaS. Almost always start with organic because most SaaS products are created for existing problems, quite frequently, most and not for new problems that are coming up. If there's organic keywords, basically what I call commercial intent or business intent, which means people are searching for a solution. I just saw that Vivek from I think Quick Dry Cleaning Software is here. I thought that was a really cool business. So I just did a quick search about what would be their keywords. So if I'm looking at now to give you an example over here, business intent keywords would be laundromat management software, dry cleaning center software, and basically you find out these keywords on which you can do both organic, that is, you can build up SEO, and you can also to make it quicker a little bit, you can also make it run on AdWords and PPC. Then comes inbound. Inbound is basically when you know that there's an existing problem which is posed to your software. Sometimes, like, not always directly issued or directly addressed by your software, but it is what your target audience often goes through. That is a great case for inbound, where you create basically content, different kinds of content, could be infographics, blogs, YouTube videos, anything, ebooks, webinars, and you try and get your prospects to come and look at the content. After which you try and convert them. That is, once they're in your funnel, once they've had some kind of an interaction with you in which they start respecting you for your knowledge, and then you try and convert them into a prospect or lead and a customer. Outbound prospecting, I think most of us here would have done it. Basically cold emails, cold calls, where you're being extremely smart about who you're targeting, what you're saying to them. I just saw this that are low tech acquaintance. Anant, I'll get back to your question. You just put it up right now. I'll get back to your question a little later. Then there's paid media. For example, we're in the accounting tech space. I'm from Fyle. Fyle does expense management. So for us, accountingtoday.com has a lot of advertising options where we can put up ads on their website. We can put ads in their newsletters. We can run webinars with them, which they will promote to their list, their email list. That would be paid media. And events would be basically live. Right now, because of COVID, there's a lot of offline. There's not a lot of offline events. There's mostly online events like what we're doing right now. However, there's a big case that if you have the budget, or if you can just travel and be a little smart about it, get into an event, build your network, and build a prospect list from there. Sometimes through a booth, but many founders on a budget, what they'll try and do is they'll try and score a ticket, or they'll try and show up and see if they can enter the event, and then basically network over there and try and build a prospect list manually versus having a booth. Yeah, Amit.
So I would see channels as paid, owned, and earned. That's how I've always seen channels, right? We've talked about, we have slides coming up which will talk about that, but one which we are not covering extensively is events. And I've always had, me and the founding team of founders I work with, we've always had a different perspective to events. I've even worked with a CEO who used to say, events se kuch nahi hota, events don't give ROI. And, that's not true. So if I were the founder, I would actually, my focus would be on being seen. So I would actually look at events from a perspective of that, okay, so out of all the 20 events that happened this year, these are the 10 where, which can get me a speaking opportunity and the target, visibility in those events, and I would spend on them. These are the three where I should participate and network, because there are a lot of CEOs and senior leadership attending, and maybe five or six where I could get a lot of media opportunity by just presenting a gimmick. So for example, I did an event with SimilarWeb where each attendee during that very, very segmented event, we gave their each and every person an analysis of their company, of a digital report of their own marketing performance. And out of all the other people that were there, um, I got a call back from me, being a marketer, got a call back from most of the people who I gave this report to. This was a tactic. This was something which helped us stand out from those events. Many a times, even when there was a speaking opportunity, you would go and say, hey, um, we have just done something for Nika. I'm talking about another startup there. We've just done something for Nika, and we helped them achieve 40% more orders in the most critical period, which is the festive season. And I would love to tell you how we can turn the business card just right. Nika 40% higher orders, know how. And we used to just give business cards, and we always got a call back. Depends on what the way you see events. People see events as cost. I see, and I'm very happy to have worked with founders who saw events as opportunities to leverage at. We even used to have a post-event team who used to work together as a team to make sure that we used to get ROI from events. I have we did participate in a lot of startup events where I a partnership with NASCOM and IMA, where we could get our founders to just go and talk or be a part of a panel. That's how you get noticed. Totally depends on your business goals. But to say that investment in any of these channels is not good, you're being plain myopic. We'll dig deeper into this, especially around CRO and paid media, earned media, how they're important as we go forward on this. Okay, Sid, let's start with SEO first.
Right. Like I said over here, the moment you see that there's even a little bit of traction, I would start SEO on that day, because every founder I've spoken to has said, I wish I'd started SEO a little earlier. Once they see the result that come in, because you put in the effort and then the results are very reliable, they keep coming in over time. Especially in the SMB space where SEO really matters, over there too, like every time I see, they're like, oh shit, I wish we would have started like right when we did our startup, right? And we basically thought of it and started in the pages, etc. That is when we should have done it. But and over here, I'd always look at you first, start with the commercial intent keywords. Can I just quickly share my screen? Is that possible? No, I think, okay, I'm not able to share my screen. Anyway, so like I said, I was looking at this one, the keywords of quick dry cleaning software. And when I did some research, I saw they have a lot of competitors. Maybe they're copycats, I'm not sure, or maybe they're there for some time, but many of those competitors started showing up for the different keyword like laundromat management software or dry cleaning center software, etc. So Google, good thing is both in AdWords or a tool like SEMrush or even Google at the end of the search results, it gives you related queries. And from that, you can basically completely create your list of commercial intent or business intent keywords and target them heavily. Then comes your paid acquisition. Same thing again, you look at these commercial intent, that is the keywords that people use when they're looking to buy or looking to solve a problem. And in that case, it's basically what keyword that someone is searching for, how closely your ad copy matches that, and then how well your landing page basically matches the intent or the questions that someone will have in their mind. When suppose they're searching for laundromat management software, then your ad copy should be talking about laundromat management software, nothing else. And your landing page should then be talking exactly about that. Like how you have the best laundromat software, how different things, all of that. Now, the problem with paid acquisition, like I said over here, is if you're not careful and you just start doing some kind of experiments over there without thinking about it, you'll end up burning budget just to learn. When ideally there's so much of content out there, there's so much of go to YouTube, figure out the best how to set up AdWords correctly, etc. You will see that you can get to about 75-80% quality very quickly just by learning on your own and then setting it up so that you're not burning budget. Yeah.
Okay. So on the SEO front, I'll say is there are various. It's too small time to actually talk about the various hacks that you can use. I would just say have a landing page for everything, for every use case. Let Google read what you do. Take a very, very close look at your competition with SEMrush, Ahrefs, SimilarWeb. The tools are available. Tools are not a problem. Do an analysis of the branded keywords, high intent keywords, or what do you call money keywords, and then arrive at your own copies. You can be very smart about it. And it can actually, a good SEO can actually lower down your paid acquisition cost. Now, coming to paid acquisition, Sid, you want to take that quickly? We're actually running a little short in time.
Yeah, just explain on paid acquisition. Okay. The one thing I mentioned was one quick hack is just copy competitor pages and go from there, so that you're not making some basic mistakes. Yeah.
So when you talk about paid acquisition, one very important word that comes to mind is CRO, which is basically essentially revenue optimization. And you got to think of an inverted funnel. When you talk about why my pages are not converting, why people are not converting, when you arrive at that problem, and you will with scale, you got to ask yourself, or rather you need to see everything like an inverted funnel. So if this is my inverted funnel, at each stage is when customers start at the bottom, right? And at each stage they're moving up that funnel by saying a micro yes. These micro yeses are all live. They're happening live when they come to your website. Your job is to make these people say yes at every moment of truth. And if you can do that, your conversions will be much, much higher. Sid already covered landing pages, messaging, copies. I would say build a lot of A/B testing into it. Run segment projects within your dashboards to identify which segments perform, which versions, which messaging performs better. But the key is understand customers, close the feedback loop, give them incentives, to give them price off, meet them if you can, create close groups with them to really understand what makes them tick. The micro yeses are important, and you can do that by reducing friction. How many fields in your form? With every increase in form field, you'd see that if there's a very high value line behind, say, let's take an example of a Gartner. When a Gartner's Magic Quadrant is published, if there are 10 fields, people will fill those 10 fields to get access to that, versus a free trial of a software which is a commodity. If you have anything more than 3 fields there, you would see the response rates and the fill rates go down. So you got to really, really think about the money that you're spending and how you're spending it, and be very smart about it. If there's a way for you to talk to your customers in real time, you could use conversational chatbots. They're available very freely, and you can, if you have access to customer heat maps. You can identify which are the roadblocks at which you have the highest drop rates. I would advise you to take a good look at that and have the intervention at the right time. So imagine you go to a page, there's a particular section where people drop. The moment you reach that page, a chatbot pops up and says, hey, I can get you to this faster. If you can give me these 3 details, let's talk. Remember, hiding behind a form, hiding value behind a form versus giving the value live to your customer, they will always choose the latter, which gives you conversions, which saves you a lot of cost. Now, in terms of paid, you need to find out the best audience, the best customer segment that gives you the results. On LinkedIn, if you can identify, who identify very, very clearly in terms of interests, in terms of groups, in terms of profiling, who are the people who are more likely to contribute, you'll obviously save cost. You can augment your ad spend with a lot of retargeting, retargeted ads. I have always found value in creating a huge, creating live lists of people who visit my website or take part in a campaign and target them on LinkedIn and Google. It always pays off. Don't want to go deep into retargeting, but that's something you would want to take up. Don't go mass market till you get your segments right. Once you've got your segments right, identify which are the most profitable segments, and then you remember that you're asking them more often than not to change a habit, to buy things this way, to not use a product but use this. Don't do things this way but use my software to do it that way. Remember, at each of these points, because you're asking them to make a change, there is a friction. Either you educate them, you pre-educate them on how and why they should be taking that, making that change, or you make it easy for them to make that change. Your paid acquisition ROI will depend on that. So when you're able to get them to break these habits is when you get the maximum amount of success on paid. Let's move on. Sid, you want to cover this? ABM is something, is my favorite topic. And I fear that if I start on ABM, it's going to take half an hour just for that. So I'll let you do the talking.
Yeah, so I think what I've written over here now, if you're charging less than $400 per month, often ABM doesn't make sense. And ABM, account-based marketing, is simply basically you have a large list, you're emailing them, and you're also targeting them with ads where you're uploading their email into an ad targeting software, and these days you have that this thing where it will try and find them, just a person on the internet and across the network sites, and show them. For example, if your ABM software, let's say, has a tie-up with New York Times, let's just assume, and I'm targeting Amit.Thapliyal at PeopleStrong.com, then ideally, if Amit
give out my email ID.
Okay.
Go on. Sorry.
But let's say I'm targeting Amit through his email. Okay. Ideally, what should happen is I'm sending him an email, and when he's going to, let's say, the New York Times, he should see some ad that I've set up for him. That is mota in ABM in today's world, but obviously it's much more than that, but I'm keeping it really simple. Now, what happened with this outbound approach or hybrid outbound approach, if you want to call it? The conversion rates are really low. So it has to be worth your while. Often you have to call people, you have to send them an email, you have to show them ads, then you have to reach out to them on LinkedIn, either personal messages on LinkedIn or connects or in mails. Like, you have to do a lot just to get to that one person and really get their attention. It doesn't work if the deal size outcome is not sizable, right? Because a lot of time and effort goes into just one account, right? So what I've found are the 4 keys to success, and obviously there's more, but these are things that really matter in the end. Okay, the quality of the contact list. If your contact list is bad, if it's old, people have moved on from their roles, etc. For example, I get someone's email, but they're not in the organization anymore, they've moved on, etc. Right? What happens is we're sending them emails or we're giving them phone calls, and they're like, hey, listen, I'm not even there, what are you guys talking about? Or you simply get a bounce back. The second thing is, if you have to have that initial, like they said, elevator pitch, the 60-second, the first, say, 15, 20, 30 seconds, what can you say that really gets them to listen? Okay. And again, you're not able to crack that, your calls go nowhere. You might even get connects, but the connect will simply be not interested, sorry, bye. The third thing where we are always struggling because it's ongoing, your domains and your phone numbers get into spam lists, your emails get into spam lists. Especially when you send out, when you get too excited with emailing and you send out too many emails immediately, almost certainly your domain gets into some kind of spam list. So you have to be careful over there about what kind of messages you're sending, so that people are not marking you as spam. The higher the relevance, the higher the context, the less you get marked as spam, the more you're sending it out just a random message, more chance of spam. And same goes with your phone numbers and your any other form of outreach. Even on LinkedIn, like it's been multiple times that our sales guys navigator account has been blocked because they're actually overdoing it, right? So it's basically the entire world now is limiting the number of messages that we can send out. Okay, which means each message has to count more. It has to have more value, which means you have to make it more contextual. You have to have the quality much better. Okay. And finally, it's determination. Most startups give up too early. Like someone will say, I sent out 300 emails, no response. My response, I will send out 3,000 emails, then let's talk. If you haven't even sent out 3,000 emails, then how does it even matter? You've done nothing, because the conversion rates are so low, 0.1%. To sometimes 1%. I just call it that much. That is the response rate that you get. So it's just about determination. You do a lot of it to get better and to get to that stage where okay, fine, I understand this process. Now I can hire 10 or 15 people, and I can hire 10 people and I can put them, because now my process is working. I know what emails, how to take care of the technical aspects. Other than that, if you never do that initial determined experimentation, you'll never get to a stage where you can actually scale outbound. And the good thing about outbound is, or the ABM is, once you figure it out, you can really scale it. So yeah, over to you, Amit.
So, and I'm just straining from not launching into ABM, since Sid, you already talked about it, and we're short in time. So to our audience, if you could just let us know in the chat, if we intend to go a little overboard with time, by 10 to 15 minutes. I hope you're okay with it. If you're not, please do let us know, because there's some ground more to be covered. Coming back, so ABM, it makes me smile and cringe at the same time, because what I've seen is people use it at the wrong place. In most companies, it's misused as ABM, whereas it truly is activity-based campaigns, right? People want campaigns to be done at specific accounts, and that's not what ABM is. Another fallacy is that ABM is a marketing concept. It's not. ABM in most successful organizations is driven by sales. It's led by sales because they know which account to, and there are various different, parts of, or rather types of ABM. It's 1:n hybrid, etc. 1:many, 1:1 ABM, and it's always led by sales, because they are the ones who are touching the account, right? It's in any enterprise or in any SMB, and unfortunately, fortunately, it's always upon the market. It always comes in the marketing list. So let me just tell you, marketers do activity-based or account-based campaigns. They don't do ABM. ABM is coming together of, in its true sense, a team which is dedicated to those accounts, knows them inside out, has done the profiling, and knows the buying committee inside out, has mapped all the possible use cases, and then your communication flows like you're stalking them everywhere, right? So if you are on my ABM account, you would see me not just on LinkedIn, but also get an email with me, highly personalized email, which says, "Hey, Sid, I know you. By the way, a fantastic article, fantastic session on Headstart. It was great learning from you. One of the important points that you made was blah blah blah, and this is what we do, and this is how we do it." And then I would invite them to a very custom event based for CRO or for CMOs, and so on and so forth. This alone is not a marketing activity, and I would urge you to read up more, or rather practice it more, to actually realize that ABM is not a marketing activity. It's actually an activity-based campaigns, where it is most commonly referred to. I'll stop here because ABM is very close to my heart. having burned almost all my fingers on it, but would not say that we've failed at it, but it's still an evolving practice.
Amit, I think someone asked a question in between. What works better for India, where B2B customers want high touch and are not as remunerative as global counterparts? Was asking related to ABM.
Yeah. So Sid already answered that. See, you need to understand what are the returns. Like there's